Oh, thank you.
I mean, it was.
Is it doing okay?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's doing great.
We'll see. We had a vicar one time that
It's still on.
okay, well I can turn it off because I don't think that's being broadcast
Now
out.
it's fast.
All right, that gives us a bigger screen anyway. So Synodical Council runs the synod in between synod conventions, and that's like the board of directors, and then a couple of the areas of ministry that the Synodical Council is in charge of directing that account for the majority of the work that we do together would be the board for home missions. So their job is to start and grow missions in English-speaking United States. World missions, of which I'm the chairman, which is why I sit on the Synodical Council, whose job it is to start and to foster world mission work throughout the globe. And ministerial education, whose job it is to prepare and provide pastors and teachers for the churches to serve the church both domestically and internationally. So if you're talking about what we do as a synod, and if you recall, you were directly involved with all of this through your synod mission offering. When you give $1 to church, about 10 cents of that goes to our national church body to do these three things: to start new churches in America, to start new churches around the world, and to prepare and train the next generation of called workers. So for example, we've got a whole bunch of our kids from this congregation have gone through our synodical training system. One of the things that happens is the offerings that we give help subsidize those schools to make that education more affordable for those kids. So today we're going to talk about world missions. Kind of a fun thing is right now we're serving about 300,000 people globally, which means that we within the next year or two, the people that we serve in world missions will surpass the number of people that we have in our church body domestically. So we will be bigger outside the U.S. than we are inside the U.S. And in fact, in our 10-year goal on the board for world missions to have our worldwide fellowship outside the U.S. to be 500,000 people. And I think we're tracking really well for that right now. And in fact, we might exceed that much earlier than 10 years. So our world, you can see the countries that we're working in are the ones that are colored in. Again, as the last time I showed you this, Ruth, would you play with the lights so we can take off the front of them maybe? Just because we have it colored in doesn't mean we have the country covered up with missionaries. We had one mission station in Novosibirsk, Russia, but we get to color in the entire huge block there. But we divide our mission work into teams that are regional teams, and so we've got a Latin America team, we've got a Europe team, we've got an Africa team, then we've got an Asia team, and then we also have a Native American team, because part of our work on the Native American reservations, because of how they got started and because of their status, that falls under world missions, not underneath home missions. And so those are the teams that we have. And we're going to take a look at some of what's going on in these things. So, let's see. Asia. Our Asia mission team, is comprised of 16 missionaries that are serving 17 different countries throughout Asia. Though that team is largely based in Thailand and in Hong Kong. And it's empowering the people and the partners that we work with to try to reach 1.8 billion unreached people in the area of Asia. This is our new theological educational training center just outside of Hanoi in Vietnam. The building was completed and passed inspection in end of January. We are hoping to be able to have full possession of this, although one of the things we find out is that working in communist Vietnam is different than working in Peoria.
I wonder why.
Yeah, so we're still working our way through some of that. But this was a picture from the dedication service that this was in July. This will be the site where we're going to be training the pastors of the Hmong people in Vietnam. Kind of a fascinating story that the Hmong people that were worshiping there, most of their male leaders, especially their male religious leaders, were killed. They largely existed without trained pastors for quite a while until through the work of Bankeo Lor and the Wells World Mission Team, this relationship as not just fostered, but now is coming to full bloom. This was graduation day on July 16th, where we graduated the first 55 pastors, 55 Hmong pastors from the program. It's kind of an amazing picture there. I wish I could make it a little bit bigger, but the one on the right, you can see right in the center is President Schroeder. The 55 new pastors that have been graduated are all sitting behind him, and behind that is a great big red flag with a star and sickle on it. You know, it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, right? You know, interestingly enough, we graduated 55 Hmong pastors from this seminary. You know how many seminarians we're going to graduate this year from our domestic seminary? Less, yeah. Maybe
25.
Let's call it 30. It's going to be between 30 and 40, I think. So it's kind of amazing to see the level of blessing that God's giving us here in Vietnam. Also, we're not just training in Hanoi, but the training's going on in the rural areas of Vietnam as well. The professors Bonkeo Lor and Professor Joel Nitz are the missionaries that are teaching the church leaders of this Hmong Fellowship Church. They're doing it periodically and through visitation because we've been working on getting visas for a long time. This is the other thing I found out working for World Missions is what a pain visas are. You know, the whole thing, like when you pop over to Italy and you get a visa without asking for it, getting a work visa in most countries is an extremely expensive and lengthy process. I greatly never just understood that, what a pain that is.
Most countries have incredibly strong immigration laws, especially when they're poorer countries, because immigrants tend to hurt native populations the poorer they are.
What we're dealing with mostly is when you come in as a religious worker. Religious worker visas are a little bit different, so that's one of the harder ones. But here we have Dr. Baer. John Baer's on the left. He's the president of Asia Lutheran Seminary. Asia Lutheran Seminary was originally focused on training in Hong Kong, but they expanded to all of East Asia, and they graduated their first cohort of pastors in 2016. And since that time, Asia Lutheran Seminary now is a accredited Master of Divinity granting seminary that serves all of East Asia, and we're starting a new regional chapter of it in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And this will be the group that serves all the theological education needs for Asia. Some new missionaries, right on the left there is Justin Steinke. He graduated from the seminary this past May, and he was assigned to the Philippines. So he and his wife are in the middle of spending a year learning language and culture and how to best serve the people with the gospel. Pastor Steinke and his wife had previously served in East Asia through through what's called the Friends Network, which is a parasynodical group that sends people into foreign countries to live their lives and do friendship evangelism. And on the right, teacher Jeremy Seeger accepted his call to serve as a technology missionary in the Asia One team. So got some new young folks that are out there right now. This is our Bible Institute in Pakistan. Again, we have an interesting set of work going on in Pakistan. These are Sunday school leaders and Pakistani pastors that are meeting in Dubai. Yes, Aaron? Is
that one legal, or like in Pakistan? I don't know.
We're on the internet. Everything we do is legal.
No, I meant like legal in Pakistan.
No, I meant this is on the internet. So yeah, no, I won't talk about anything where it would not be. We do operate in countries where, yeah, there are some countries that exist in the world that have laws against proselytizing. There are also some countries that exist in the world that would not want our work being done there. The light of the gospel will find a way.
Yeah, no, I was just asking because with the LCMS, the pastors that we're training in Pakistan, that they're training in Pakistan are they're apostates from Islam, so they're doing it like secretly in their car so that their government doesn't find out.
Yeah, we could tell you some stories, but not on the internet. All right. Okay. Here's a fun thing that's happening. New mission work is starting in New Zealand. Interestingly enough, New Zealand is 5% Chinese right now, and they expect it to grow to be 10% Chinese within the next 10 years, the nation of New Zealand. This is actually a group of people that were originally from Hong Kong, where we've had that strong presence with Asia Lutheran Seminary for a while. And I don't know if you follow the news of what's happening in Hong Kong. Obviously, China's trying to take away what was its special status, is cracking down on all sorts of things. And one of the things that the British government did was it extended to anyone who was, and I'm going to get the details wrong, anyone who was born during the Protectorate, when Hong Kong was part of the British Empire. Britain has told them they can come into the Commonwealth wherever they'd like to as citizens. And so there's been kind of a mass exodus from Hong Kong to British Commonwealth areas. And these folks were part of our church called Salem, which was the name of the church in Hong Kong. And now they're gathering in New Zealand, and we're helping to stand that group up, that they might reach out to their, especially to their Chinese and Mandarin-speaking neighbors that are joining them in New Zealand. That's missionary Matt Dobler and his wife Christine on the right. They were resident missionaries in Hong Kong and have relocated to Chiang Mai since we had to take all of our expatriates out of Hong Kong. The Europe team. Let's take a look at Europe team. Our European team is mostly partner churches, so it's interesting to think about sharing the gospel in the continent that was responsible for sending the most missionaries out during the 19th and 20th century, right? But if you know anything about Europe, if you go over there and see those big, beautiful churches on Sunday morning, they all stand empty. That's right, because so much of after the Second World War, especially, and maybe even before it, Europe has become post-Christian. And so we have a bunch of struggling little churches over there with whom we have a partnership. If you see on the right, the tall guy there, that's Luke Wolfgram and his wife Jennifer. They were our missionaries into Novosibirsk, Russia, for 25 years. Imagine being sent to Siberia on purpose, right? But that's where they did ministry right up until the time when the war started, and we had to pull them out. So they have been relocated to Leipzig, Germany, where there is the seminary, and the seminary and the head of a German synod with whom we're in fellowship, the Evangelische Lutherische Freikirche, the Evangelical Lutheran Free Church. It's a group of confessional Lutherans that I was just at their seminary this last year and got a chance to meet with them. Wonderful folks. These guys here, you can see, is Pastor Bishka and his son Nikola. They were the group that we have in Albania. These are our London missionaries, or two of them anyway. On the left are the Bergs, Conifer Berg and his wife. And on the right, you can see the children of missionary Mike Hartman. Mike Hartman presented to us maybe a year or two ago. And he's actually going to be here for that pastoral conference next week. If you'd like to get a chance to talk to him, come join us for that worship service on Monday night. Interestingly enough, what's happening in London is the way in which they're seeking to build an opportunity to share the gospel in London is through volunteer opportunities. So one of the big things in British society, so we're told, is charity work. Like if you listen to King Charles's Christmas Day speech, you would hear him talk about the importance of charity work for the British people. And so one of the ways in which this London mission group is going to be trying to get involved in their community is by organizing WELS volunteers to come over from America for short-term or long-term volunteer projects to work with several local London charities as a way for the church to be involved in its community and find new members, or find the opportunity to share the gospel with people. So if you subscribe to any of our Synod newsletters or things like that, you'll hear about the London volunteer opportunities. So that sounds like a really interesting thing. Yeah. The lady on the right there. There's just some interesting people in our London core group. The lady on the right is Suzanne, and Suzanne works as a clothier on Savile Row. If you know what Savile Row is, that's she actually showed the mission team some of the stuff they worked on, the uniforms for the last coronation, which is kind of cool. And I found out another member of our core group took second place on the Great British Bake Off. So the church in Kyiv, or in Ukraine, the Ukrainian Lutheran Church, is led by Pastor Vyacheslav Horpenchuk. And Slavic has been here at our church. He's presented to us. And one of the amazing things is that this church, of course, is serving a world at war. But one of the most amazing things that we've seen is God's people throughout the U.S. have gathered a great deal of monetary support for the people for the Ukrainian Lutheran Church. And one of the things that we've seen is that the Ukrainian Lutheran churches have stayed when other churches have fled. They have been a place where people can go to get help when other churches are empty. And a great example of the impact of that was this last year, more than, I think they had 57 adult confirmands at our downtown Kyiv church, which is, that's a church that's small and has been struggling for years, and I think 60 new people must be about double the number of people that they had. So God's growing that church in kind of an amazing way. And their synodical council wrote a statement of thanks to the Wells and to everybody who supported them. I'll just read you what their note. We wish to thank the many people who've helped us since the time this war began. In many congregations, your help has enabled us to survive. Without your help, much of our ministry would not have been possible. Your aid has helped members and their families, pastors and their families, villagers, volunteer workers, etc. With your help, nearly, if not all, requests for aid have been met. Money for vehicle repairs and fuel have enabled pastors to travel and reach out to many people. The ability to get medicines have, in fact, saved lives, and food assistance has kept some of the elderly from starvation. Most of all, we thank our Lord for you. Thank you for your love and concern for us. So kind of amazing to see that God can even use times of war to bring out opportunities for the gospel to gather new people. So kind of a wonderful thing. Pray that war comes to a speedy conclusion. Any questions about Europe? Aaron?
I noticed most of the peninsula was in gray.
Most of what's that?
Most of Europe was in gray on the map.
I don't know which one. I'm not sure. Oh, you mean the very first map?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We have presence in Albania, Latvia, Ukraine, Romania, Portugal, England, Germany, Sweden, Finland, Norway. Yeah, so maybe you were seeing mostly Italy and Spain, probably. Yeah, but
also Switzerland and
yeah. Russ.
You mentioned a partnership with the church in Germany. What does that look like for our synod? Do we share growth plans, strategy? What is that?
So one of the things that we provide and help them with is, like missionary Wolfgram is going to be helping to teach at their seminary. We meet regularly with them for conferences. They actually recently asked if, when we met with them last, they asked if they could start calling pastors from our church to serve over there. We said you can certainly ask. The problem is we don't have that many people that I think would be able to work in the German as fluently as that kind of educated group would expect. You know, like I'd go over there and I'd sound like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. You know, so but yeah, so mostly it's they were also participating in all of our theological conferences as well. So, but they are self-supporting, so we don't provide them any dollars, and we don't have to provide them any missionaries. They've been a self-supporting church for a long time. They're a free church, which means they're not part of the state church system. The state church system in Germany is largely bankrupt of the gospel. So free churches exist outside the state church. And this was a group that was really nearly decimated because it was behind the Iron Curtain. And so for all those years, it had to exist in an environment that was trying to not allow churches to flourish. Yeah. So it's a relatively small group. Probably, I'm going to get this number wrong, but I think it may be something like 20 pastors, 6,000 members, something like that. Yeah. Not like that Hmong Fellowship group, which is huge. This is a small one. Again, it's kind of interesting that the places where the gospel started in Europe have grown so small. In places where the gospel is coming for the first time, like Vietnam, it's exploding. Yeah.
Pastor,
Yes, please.
how long do we anticipate it will take before, like places like Europe that are post-Christian, and obviously in America we're working that way if we're not already. How long does it take for it to get to the point where we end up like the Hmong, where all of a sudden it's like it's new again and it starts to grow again? Is there any history to that, or like do we expect eventually Europe becomes this great hotbed again?
I would expect the parts of Europe where Christianity is on the rise, and it is in parts of Europe, it's in the immigrant centers, where immigrants are coming from other countries to London. That part of London is growing in Christianity. I don't know that we've seen an example yet in world history of someplace where the gospel thrived, where it came back and thrived again. I gotta think about that, but I don't.
That's kind of unnerving.
Yeah.
The fact that we live in a country that is following Europe, does that mean it never flourishes again here at some point?
Well, I mean, there are still Christians in Europe.
Well, I know
There'll be
that.
Christians in America,
Right,
but
but-
is it going to? But the Christian church within the next 25 years is going to be large, or within the next 50 years is going to be an African church. It seems like the vast majority of Christianity will be in Africa within 25 years.
It's a general thing where in the northern hemisphere, Christianity is largely shrinking, and a lot of that is because the northern hemisphere is demographically collapsing, as we speak.
Let's talk about the Southern Hemisphere, Latin America.
Also demographically collapsing.
So in Latin America, we use a program called Academia Cristo, which is, we've talked about this before. It's an interesting online platform that's meant to, basically the goal is to identify people who would be able to gather and lead a group of believers and start a new church. But it starts out with a great big funnel with this app or a WhatsApp thing called Academia Cristo, which is a place for online learning about Christianity. And over 1 million people have downloaded that app and entered that program. And after people enter that app, if they self-direct their way through a certain number of lessons, then they get an invitation to participate in synchronous meetings, synchronous online classes with our missionaries. And if they go through enough of those online classes with our missionaries, then they'll receive a missionary mentor who will help them begin to develop personally. And they follow, basically it's a path that comes through like everything you'd learn in Faith Builders, everything you learn in the Small Catechism, and then it begins them on a path towards learning how to become a church planter. And then at the end of it, of all those, so of 1 million people that download the app, and maybe, I'm not sure how many people finished the app versus how many people came into synchronous classes to being, how many people came down to this. This is the number I do know, which is really cool. Last year, we called 39 of these people, 39 leaders who are now leading churches that have popped up in all these different places in Latin America. And so we started last year, the ratio is crazy, like in 20 years worth of Latin American mission work, maybe we started 4 or 5 places, and in 1 year we started 39 using this method. And they're in places that, like when I went there to visit, places we never would have gone, like Tenancingo, Mexico, where sex trafficking capital of the world. And I was there, and one of the guys that came through this app, Juan Reyes, I was in his barnyard, and he had 70 people there for worship that day as he was leading them. Or in Ecatepec, one of the most dangerous cities in Mexico, we're there meeting in an underwear factory, worshiping Jesus with a group of people that we never would have found except here. So it's really fascinating that 39 of these churches, these new churches, they have Spanish names for everything, so they're Grupo Sembrador, so they're planting groups. Is kind of an amazing thing. Like there on the left, you can see Eduardo Milanese. This is in Cochabamba, Bolivia. He was a face jaw surgeon, but he came through the Academia Cristo app, took the online classes with a missionary, he finished the program, confessed doctrinal agreement, began gathering a group at his medical office to study God's Word. And in February of this last year, he finally completed his last studies and prepared for church planting groups, and they were received by our new Latin American synod, the Iglesia Cristo Wales Internacional. So that's the church body that's being formed in there. Please.
This Academia Cristo internet model and platform, is that something that they're evaluating? Could that be used in Europe with changes, culturally specific changes?
Yeah, in fact, what we have in the English version of it is called TELL, T-E-L-L, and that is currently being used in widely in Africa, because it turns out in Africa everybody has two languages. One is their regional language, and the other one is English. Yeah. So it's and now TELL is this model is now being also developed in Mandarin for China, and in Tagalog for the Philippines, and I'm trying to think if there's another one going on too. Those are the ones I can think of offhand. So yeah, that model is going to be across different language platforms.
We're gonna do that in America too?
Yes, in fact, Academia Cristo is now being rolled out in America as part of our new effort for Hispanic outreach in the States. And so our old model of Hispanic outreach was different than this. Now what we've convinced the Board for Home Missions to do is let's try Academia Cristo domestically. And so that is the effort right now. I think we've got 19 churches that are doing the pilot program of using Academia Cristo to see if they can gather Grupo Sembrador here in America as well. It's really kind of fun, neat thing. Yeah, and it's currently everything's being done on pretty much everything's switching to WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the most popular way to connect outside of the United States. So that's where it is. If we do it here in America, it'll probably have to become iPhone compatible. But you can do WhatsApp on your iPhone. So another one of the groups that's meeting there. This past summer at Synod Convention, we formally adopted fellowship with the Iglesia de Cristo Wales Internacional. This is their president, and he came to bring greetings, and it was a really cool thing. So one Latin America team. We have missionaries in Latin. Our expatriate missionaries are centered in Quito, Ecuador mostly, and we have some that work out of Miami to serve the northern part of Latin America, and then Quito, Ecuador is where you have the rest of them. Africa. The Africa team currently works with established church bodies in Cameroon, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Uganda, and Zambia. And we're beginning to work in many other countries through the English version of Academia Cristo, the TELL program. In this past summer, we declared fellowship with the Obadiah Lutheran Synod of Uganda. The Obadiah Lutheran Synod first came into contact with us back in 2017, and visits with our missionaries, continuing theological education, have led us to be in partnership and in fellowship with them. We were supposed to host President Musa at our Synod convention, but visa, he couldn't get one, so he couldn't come. But this is a picture of him at our Wells Center for Mission and Ministry a couple of months later when the visa actually came through. And I saw just yesterday pictures of President Schroeder is in Uganda right now because they invited him over for this sort of thing on the other end, and they had a service yesterday with 1,000 people. That is what I heard, or 1,000 people invited. So that's Pastor Musa and his wife Mary and their son Nathaniel. Also in the middle of doctrinal discussions with Tanzania, or if you're in Africa, they call it Tanzania. So I don't know which one I'm supposed to call it now.
Well, you're in America, so Tanzania. It's not confusing.
And here's a picture of the ministry to the Nur and the South Sudanese refugee camps. So if you have been watching the news, you know the refugee camps in the South Sudanese refugee situation is pretty awful. But our missionaries are working in the refugee camp in Gambela, Ethiopia. They're joined there by Dr. Kebede, the president of our Lutheran Church of Ethiopia. Central Africa Medical Mission. So the Central Africa Medical Mission has been something that has been in Africa. Boy, they just celebrated it. I don't know if it was the 50th or it must have been 75th anniversary of the Central Africa Medical Missions. This is where nurses and doctors are providing medical services to the community, and also have that as a wonderful bridge for the gospel. This is the group that's meeting, talking about or investigating the feasibility of WELS partnering with our church in Kenya to do a medical camp there. Here's TEL. This was the program that I was talking about when Christelle asked the question about it, that the English version of Academia Christo, that has the TEL Facebook page right now has reached more than 1.5 million people. We have 200 active TEL students that are in some point of the path to become leaders of God's, or of group leaders and church planters. We recently called a missionary, the man on the right, missionary Hoff. He and his family now reside in Africa, and they're part of the Africa team, but it's very specifically to work with the TEL students that are being identified in Africa. And so he's their mission mentor to help these groups help these group leaders do their plants and keep going. Kind of a fascinating thing. Native American missions. This is Pastor Gary Lupe, the Native American pastor who's living on the Apache Reservation in Arizona's White Mountains. He was ordained in 2011, pastors 2 congregations, and he also teaches classes at the Apache Christian Training School, where he at one point had taken classes himself. So he and another pastor, Kirk Massey, another Apache, worked alongside WELS missionaries and other Apache leaders to bring the gospel to the 2 reservations, at Fort Apache Reservation and the San Carlos Apache Reservation. We have 2 schools there as well. Our school at Peridot is expanding, doing really well. Yes, we had a really fun Board for World Mission meeting this last week. It was our annual retreat, and sometimes, I don't know, this one was particularly fun. One of the things we got to do was this school that is in such a hurting and struggling community. They are in the middle of doing a project to help build new classrooms. The Builders for Christ are involved, local funds are being raised, and the Board for World Missions this last week gave them a grant of $200,000 to finish the program. And so they're going to finish it this spring, and it was really great to meet with their principal, or we met online, but just to see the emotion involved with them knowing that they're going to be able to push this project across the finish line. So really, really neat stuff. So yeah, we've been in the Apache Reservation for well over 100 years. The WELS began their mission work there because we were looking for a people group that had never been reached with the gospel. And the Apaches, as if you remember your American history, there was reason why they were the last ones to be reached with the gospel. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I think weren't they like the American Mongols, or was that the Comanche?
They were completely unreached by the gospel, and our missionaries got there mostly because they were still. It wasn't that long since all the fighting had stopped. Yeah. This is Pastor Missionary John Holtz. He's the Native Christian counselor. He's going to be working with our Native Christian Network. The Native American team right now has plans to use their Apache, their trained Apache members to reach out to new tribes. There are hundreds of tribes of Native Americans across America, and what they want to do is use the members of the Apache tribe to reach out as evangelists to new tribes. And the first area that they're looking to expand, it would be near the Four Corners area out there, where they're going to be calling for a new missionary to the Four Corners here next week, I believe.
500 recognized tribes.
Thank you. Yeah, so a couple other really cool things we got to do at this last Board for World Missions meeting was we called 2 pastors for our brand new mission start that we're going to start in Senegal. So Senegal is a West African nation. It's a Muslim country, and we're called and we have absolutely no one there. This is raw mission start. And so we called Pastor John Hildebrand and Pastor Mark Zondag and their families to join us at to begin our work among the Wolof tribe in Senegal. And so we're kind of a unique opportunity. They've got a cultural center in Senegal that will allow us to have our missionaries live with a Wolof family for the first 6 months or 9 months. And so Our missionaries are going to be able to live with somebody from the Wolof tribe, learn the language, learn the culture, and one of the other things that we get to do here is learn how to do mission work in a nearly 100% Muslim country. Well, the upside of this Muslim country is there's no law against proselytizing, so they won't get arrested for doing it. But so that was really cool, and then we also approved a plan to begin work in Australia. Australia, this is kind of an interesting story because Australia has a whole bunch of laws that make it really hard for new religious groups to enter Australia. They passed them to stop things like the Jehovah's Witnesses and Scientologists that were causing trouble. So basically, what it is you need, if you're going to do mission work on the continent of Australia, you need to be invited in by another group. Well, we have this couple of little confessional Lutheran churches that we're in fellowship with that have enabled us to invite us into the country underneath their umbrella so that we can start doing mission work there. And so we're going to do mission work with two aspects, one of which would be to reach out to Chinese folks that have left Hong Kong and relocated into Australia, and the other is, mission work to people that are not originally from China. And so we have assigned two missionaries to do that work there. Missionary Dobler and Missionary Yankee are both hopefully going to be moving there in the next couple of months. So that's pretty great. And then, Don.
Back to synagogue, even though it's not against the law, culturally, is it safe to do so? I mean, will they get a lot of?
Culturally, it's safe to do so.
Okay.
Yeah. That is. It's safe to do that there. That's why it's a good place for us to go. It'd be different in
Iraq.
Indonesia, for example. That's hard. Malaysia, that's hard.
Okay.
But so we got to give this wonderful grant to the Apache reservation. We got to call 2 missionaries to Senegal. We got to call 2 missionaries to Australia, and then we got to meet with this family that came in. These families, the nephews of this little old lady who was 97 years old, and we got to hear all about her life story. She was the first. If you know anything about Milwaukee, the Red Star Yeast Company, anybody? She computerized them in the 1950s, which is hard to imagine. But then she wanted to move into management, and they because of course at the time they said no, you'd make all the men uncomfortable. So she quit. She went to University of Wisconsin Milwaukee, came out with an accounting degree, became the first female vice president of First Wisconsin Bank, and then the first vice president of International something or another. Lived her whole life single, going to our church in Zebaoth, and then up at Calvary in Thiensville. And this past June, she passed away, and her nephews and nieces came to bring us the gift that she made to World Missions, which was a check for $800,000. Wow! And that was we were just one of I think 6 recipients in the Wells. So. But it was a really, really wonderful thing, and to hear the story of this woman who all of her life, loved the fact that we reaching out with the gospel, and then we got to talk to her nephews and nieces about all the ways in which those funds are going to use to share the light of the gospel with people that don't yet know it. So it was a really wonderful meeting, and it makes me want to go back for more. So. Any questions about what we've done? Chris and then Jim?
We're in Australia.
Brisbane. Which is about all I know. I will probably have to go there at some point, but it's certainly not an easy place to get to, right?
Isn't that the capital?
I don't. Sydney, I thought, right?
No, Sydney's not the capital.
Or is it
I think it's either Brisbane or Melbourne.
we'll ask the internet.
Melbourne is Brisbane.
Oh, okay, Brisbane.
Jim.
So the Hmong ministry really seems to be taking off.
Yeah.
And that obviously is a minority in Vietnam. So is there prospects and possibility that their ministry will expand to the majority population of the country, or is it going to be kind of isolated?
I would hope so. I would guess not. The Hmong are a people group that had been oppressed by the majority for a really long time. So, I mean, the gospel is going to do what the gospel is going to do, but that probably in my mind, that seems unlikely. Gary?
I asked Pastor Samuel Lohr that same question.
Samuel Lohr is Bonkeo Lohr's son. He's a pastor now in the Twin Cities at which church?
St. John.
St. John. So Bonkeo Lohr is our missionary in Vietnam.
And he said in Vietnam, it's illegal for the Vietnamese people to study Christianity, but the Communist Party has no problem allowing the Hmong people to do it.
Yeah. So unlikely, I guess. But yeah, what's happening there is really cool. I mean, I think when we started working with the other thing about the Hmong Fellowship Church is they are aggressively reaching out with the gospel. When we started working with them in 2017 or 18, I think the Hmong Fellowship Church was 80,000 people. Right now it's at 140,000 people and growing. And each year that we're graduating these pastors, it's going to get, hopefully we'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's really cool. Please.
Is there any interaction with other Lutheran, say like Missouri Synod,
Yeah,
in
so-
those countries?
In those countries, so yes and no. So the Missouri Synod and Wells are meeting in doctrinal discussions all the time, and we are very much aware of each other's work. And so generally speaking, what we want to do is do work where other people aren't doing work. Yeah, we wouldn't want it to be competitive at all. Back in the day, when Wells and Missouri Synod were in fellowship, we actually used to split up responsibility for states, like when we were starting churches way back in the day, which is why if you go to Arizona right now, we've got churches that are, 5 generations old. Our ones in California are a lot younger, because back in the day with LCMS, they took California, we took Arizona. So it's not that level of partnership anymore right now, but yeah, definitely. We definitely want to be aware of what's going on. Aaron.
So I was wondering, because you said tell was in English, so I was wondering if we could basically just expand tell to like the United States and just basically use money for like Facebook advertisements to get it in the different 50 states, because I mean this method seems to be like probably one of the most effective.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would say right now, Tell is kind of, its current content is, it's definitely international. So it's, if you did it in the States, I don't know if you'd have to make it be less international or not, but I think you absolutely could. I think we've been looking at different ideas of ways to apply it in the States.
Yeah, I was wondering because like, I mean, most of our congregations in Georgia are in the north. So there's still, I don't know how many million people are in the southern part of Georgia.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, why not just work our way down?
Mm-hmm.
Just start advertising, like put the Facebook ads in a bunch of different localities and counties in southern Georgia.
Yeah. Be a great idea. I saw another hand. No, I didn't. Let's close with prayer. Lord Jesus, thank you for giving us the privilege and opportunity to share the gospel with the world. We pray today for our missionaries and their families that are doing that in places where maybe we can't go. We ask you to be with them, to strengthen their faith, to use their witness to bring many to faith and to strengthen their faith. And we pray, Lord, that you would use that same message to instill in us not just a love for you, Lord, but a love for sharing you with the lost. We ask it in your name. Amen. Thank you, guys.
I was wondering if I could get links sent to the
Sure.
Yeah, so
Just with either one, just go to the App Store and just type Academia Cristo or do Tell.
Oh, okay, yeah, because on a, you know about Discord?
Yeah.
Yeah, so on a Discord, Christian server in Discord, there was this guy from Panama who's one of the people who's like, yeah, well, I want to be Lutheran, but there's no around here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, just Google it or search it in the App Store, you'll find it.
I think I actually invited have like some maps, basically counties